Prosecutorial misconduct is what it sounds like. It's when the prosecutor misbehaves to an extent where the prejudice is so overwhelming of what he or she did that the fairness is gone. It's a due process thing, it's a protection thing. Let me give you an example. Let's say at trial, the prosecutor in her closing argument says, members of the jury, you know the defendant's guilty because he wouldn't get up here and tell you his side of the story. Not allowed to do that. Not allowed to do that, right? A defendant has the right to remain silent throughout trial. It's a Griffin error, and that's prosecutorial misconduct. Another example is a DA says to a defense witness, I know you're here illegally, and if you testify, I'm going to make sure that the authorities know about it. Obviously, prosecutorial misconduct. Let's say at a 402 ruling, which is pretrial rulings, there's a tape, a 911 tape, say. And the judge says, you know what? The 911 tape is not admissible. During trial, the prosecutor mentions the 911 tape and what it says. Prosecutorial misconduct. So prosecutorial misconduct is basically when the prosecutor does something they're not supposed to do. And you kind of know it when it happens. It catches your ear, especially the attorney. But even the defendant will hear, wait a minute, that's outrageous. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The prosecution can get away with it unless it's prejudicial. And then it has to be prejudicial to such a degree that it cannot be cured. A lot of times the prosecutor may say something they're not allowed to say, and the judge can either strike it from the record or tell the jury to disregard. But if you're the defense attorney, especially if trial's not going well, you get up there and you scream bloody murder and you demand a new trial because basically the bell cannot be unrung. The effect of prosecutorial misconduct is that usually someone has been prejudiced, okay? Whether it's the jury because they were told something they're not allowed to hear, or it's the defendant because now the jury knows something that they're not supposed to know. So the effects of prosecutorial misconduct is basically things have become unfair. And the whole point of due process, and in my opinion, the definition of justice, is fairness. So with prosecutorial misconduct, you have a direct affront to fairness. So the effects can be far-ranging. The prosecutor may say something they're not allowed to say, and then it's up to the judge, right? So depending on what the judge does, whether he just cures it with a jury instruction or declares a mistrial and you start from the beginning, it all depends on what was said and primarily depends on how much prejudice did it cause. So what do you do if there is prosecutorial misconduct as a defense attorney? Well, let's assume that it's happening during trial because technically it can happen before trial. The prosecutor doesn't give over some evidence. The prosecutor says something inappropriate to a witness, but it usually happens at trial, right? So let's say the prosecutor says something to the jury they're not allowed to say. Well, as a defense attorney, you have to be thinking like a boxer and a chess player. You have to evaluate just how damaging it is. And that's the chess game, right? I mean, can this jury still look at your client in a way where they may give him the benefit of the doubt now that they know something? Let's say it's a prior conviction for the same thing that the judge said can't come in. If it is that damaging, then the boxer gets up and pounds on the table and demands a new trial. But let's say it happens, but you like how the trial's going. You don't necessarily want to start all over. And a lot of times the client sure doesn't want to start all over. Well, then the boxer can save it for closing argument. And in closing argument, hammer the DA for the inappropriate comment. Hammer the DA that because they don't have the evidence, they're coming up with whatever they can. And it's a shame that they have to resort to such a level to try to blindly lead you somewhere that you're not even allowed to go. So you can use it in your defense, but if it's too prejudicial, you got to fight for a new trial. And again, it all depends on exactly what was said.
Everything I do that's for my health is an accomplishment.
So Donald Trump is claiming that Young Thug's YSL co-founder slept with District Attorney Fani Willis. Hey, what's up? I'm A-Dub, and check this out. So the former president alluded to Willis's connection to YSL co-founder Mondo Crenshaw during a rally earlier this week in New Hampshire, where he accused the prosecutor of having an affair with the gang member.
They waited, and I probably have another one. They say there's a young woman, a young racist in Atlanta, say racist. And they say, I guess they say that she was after a certain gang and she ended up having an affair with the head of the gang or a gang member. And this is a person that wants to indict me. She's got a lot of problems, but she wants to indict me to try and run for some other office. What's going on in this country is, and by the way, wants to indict me for a perfect phone call. This was even better than my perfect call with Ukraine. Remember?
Donald Trump's claim stems from a Rolling Stone interview with Mondo in January, which revealed that Fani Willis previously represented him in a 2019 aggravated assault case. Willis, who has since reinvented herself as a tough on-crime prosecutor, spearheaded the sprawling RICO indictment against Young Thug's YSL crew, who are accused of being a criminal street gang behind a series of violent crimes in the Atlanta area. She is also currently investigating Trump over his alleged meddling into the 2020 presidential election, including a phone call to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, during which he pressured him to find the votes to help him win. This is not her character. This is not who she is. I done had auntie to nephew, mother to son type of talks with her. I know this is not her character. This is what made me start looking at the YSL case like I know it's bigger than just her. It's politics behind this ish. It's other people that's behind her pulling strings. Rolling Stone journalist Andre G., who conducted the interview, debunked the allegations by clarifying that Mondo made no mention of any sexual relationship with Willis during their conversation. This is my report. Mondo didn't say or imply anything close to that at any point in our conversation. Donald Trump has been at odds with Willis as he attempts to discredit prosecutors investigating him and may soon face RICO charges in the state of Georgia for his alleged election fraud, according to The Guardian. While Young Thug will remain behind bars until the YSL RICO trial begins, YSL Mondo, who was not charged in that case, was recently arrested after missing a court date in connection with a separate incident last month in which he was accused of strangling a woman. After his court date no-show, federal agents with the U.S. Marshals Task Force, GBI agents, and Cobb County deputies searched his home and found drugs, cash, and at least 3 guns. Mondo is now facing several felonies, including 3 counts of violating the Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. But let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay up to date on all of our new videos. And as always, make sure to keep it all the way locked to hiphopdx.com.
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce that
A new bombshell public filing alleges financial and sexual impropriety by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, the lawyer responsible for prosecuting former President Donald Trump's Georgia election interference case. Now, the filing alleges that another prosecutor in the Trump case, named Nathan Wade, paid for lavish vacations that he took with Willis using Fulton County funds that his law firm received from the DA's office. County records show that Wade has received nearly $654,000 in legal fees since January 2022, authorized by Willis. Here's a bit more reporting from Fox News.
The sex scandal is rocking President Trump's case in Georgia. The Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney, Fani Willis, has been accused of appointing her lover as a special prosecutor in the case against Donald Trump. DA Fani Willis is responsible for taking Trump's mugshot, also allegedly financially benefited from hiring her lover, Nathan Wade, on that Trump case. This is
public filing alleges financial and sexual impropriety by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, the lawyer responsible for prosecuting former President Donald Trump's Georgia election interference case. Now, the filing alleges that another prosecutor in the Trump case, named Nathan Wade, paid for lavish vacations that he took with Willis using Fulton County funds that his law firm received from the DA's office. County records show that Wade has received nearly $654,000 in legal fees since January 2022, authorized by Willis. Here's a bit more reporting from Fox News.
The sex scandal is rocking President Trump's case in Georgia. The Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney, Fani Willis, has been accused of appointing her lover as a special prosecutor in the case against Donald Trump. DA Fani Willis is responsible for taking Trump's mugshot, also allegedly financially benefited from hiring her lover, Nathan Wade, on that Trump case. This is according to a motion that was just filed by Wade, the co-defendant. Now, who is this romantic partner who Fani Willis hired? He was just a private attorney who's never even tried a felony case. Even the Times says he has, quote, limited experience trying high-profile cases. But get this. Fani's alleged lover has been paid nearly $1 million in legal fees already.
The motion was filed on behalf of former Trump campaign official Michael Roman, who's looking to get his charges dismissed, and for Willis, Wade, and the entire DA's office to be disqualified from further prosecution of the case. Willis's office has denied all wrongdoing. That hasn't stopped Republicans from trying to spin gold from the drama. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee took it a step farther and alleged the Biden White House was even involved. She posted a copy of the alleged invoices on X, writing Fani Willis's alleged romantic partner / special prosecutor coordinated with the White House while building the political prosecution of Donald Trump, all on the taxpayer dime. See for yourself. The invoices show Wade's office met with the White House on 2 occasions, once in May of 2022 and then in November of 2022.
So Jesse Waters there is correct. I looked up this New York Times story, and it does begin that it seemed an unusual choice when Willis hired this Nathan Wade figure. Other news sources that I have looked at, just news reporters have, seems to suggest that there is probably some merit to that there's a romance between these two figures. So that's not just some wild libel being practiced here. So it is potentially, I think, an ethical matter. In fact, it says that Fani Willis was served papers by Nathan Wade's wife, who he's going through a divorce proceeding with, and she's been subpoenaed to participate in that legal action. So clearly something is going on here, and we're going to find out whether there was in fact some ethical violation of her choosing this person that she appears to be involved in. Now, whether that means these cases all get thrown out or it helps the legal defense of Trump or anyone else very much remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's very much wishful thinking.
There is a there to what they're raising.
Yeah. So the allegation is that Willis has benefited personally from not only just his salary, which I think that making salary determinations, you have to just look at what the going rate is. People are often shocked and dismayed by legal salaries, but a high-profile case, I don't think the issue is his raw salary. But the allegation that they're making is that because they are alleged to have gone on trips together that he paid for, that constitutes a kind of a kickback. My bigger concern is that she seems to have hired someone for a very important high-profile case that seems to be not especially qualified. And frankly, this might be a boon if the result is that he is no longer a part of this case, and instead of him, someone who is much more qualified to prosecute the case is actually brought in his stead. Yeah,
she apparently described him as a trusted friend and mentor in 2022, and that he was willing to take the job and more seasoned prosecutors were not. But again, this is why there have to be careful ethics around romantic entanglements, because one's judgment in who is the most qualified or who's the best fit for a job can be very much affected by having an amorous engagement with that person.
Now, the filing here accuses them of having gone on multiple cruises together and other trips that he paid for. It's worth noting that those claims were not substantiated in the filings, but that is ostensibly forthcoming. Willis has declined through a spokesperson to comment on this for this Washington Post reporting, at least. But it is also interesting, as you alluded to note that some of this information came out because of divorce filings between Wade and his estranged wife.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, this development might not end up ultimately hurting the case against the Trump or anyone else very much, but it certainly doesn't. It certainly is not good for the prosecutors.
No, it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
How Democrats could let this happen, given the political investment they have in this case, in the Georgia case specifically, because that's the case that even if Trump wins, he can't dismiss.
And it is
it's not a federal case.
And it's in some ways the case they're going to compile the most evidence for because of they charge so many people, many of whom have already provided testimony against Donald Trump. So it is interesting. I mean, this guy is going to end up, I'm going to predict it right now, becoming not involved with the case anymore. It's going to get handed off to someone else. And that, whenever you do a move like that, there's always you're harming your own case. You've already showed your cards in some ways. The new person is going to be under a cloud of scrutiny, is going to have to play catch up. So, this was a mild bit of good news for Donald Trump and everyone else being charged.
Yeah, it's really embarrassing. Democrats they cannot simultaneously frame the stakes of this election as being about democracy and focusing on how important these lawsuits are, and also let them falter in these completely predictable and unavoidable ways.
You know who would be the best person for this case? My new boyfriend.
It's outrageous with all of the relevance, all of the importance, the crucial nature of this thing, to have allowed Willis to put forward that excuse in the first place that more qualified prosecutors weren't willing to take this case. You're expected to believe in the United States of America with its 330 odd million people that there wasn't a single prosecutor. This isn't like Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, or some of these people who have been accused of criminal wrongdoing, not being able to find prosecutors, lawyers for their own cases, people who have failed to pay lawyers in the past, having trouble getting lawyers to represent them. This is a high-profile prosecution of the former president of the United States, where there is a plethora of evidence that demonstrates that at very least he leaned on people like Raffensperger to, quote, find the votes. This was a substantial, meaty prosecution that I imagine thousands of highly qualified prosecutors would have been champing at the bit to take on, and that there was not more scrutiny when Willis put forward the excuse that I hired my longtime friend and mentor who has no experience in prosecuting cases, much less these kinds of cases, because no one else in the United States of America would take it on. My goodness. We just did a segment talking about the Biden administration being asleep at the wheel. This is more evidence the Democrats are frankly just adrift.
Well, I totally agree. It's interesting always what stories of this nature get noticed or picked up by mainstream media. So it's being covered now because there's a court filing about it, that the Trump people discovered it, and Michael Roman, and is using this in the case. There's been a lot of reporting on Fani Willis. She's been subject to a lot of media scrutiny. There's been a lot of profiles of her.
Some of which I would note is, I think, not legitimate and very much in bad faith.
What do you mean?
Some of the profiles of her. As you point out, there has been a practice of, for example, I've noticed when the Post or some other right-leaning outlets do a profile on someone who the audience, a conservative-leaning, a liberal-leaning person that a conservative-leaning audience is not going to like. You can't say in the meat of the text anymore, this person is Black, because what relevance is that to the case? But there's inevitably a photograph of them. Inevitably, if the person involved is a Black person. The same thing was done in a recent New York Times article where they were talking about the Harvard board in the Claudine Gay fiasco. One of the board members is Ken Chenault. He was alluded to as a former CEO of American Express, but the implication isn't necessarily from his name or his position that you would expect him to be Black. He was the one member of the board that was pictured in the New York Times article. So I do think there has been an undue kind of focus on the credibility, the eligibility of certain members that are involved in this prosecution that is perhaps driven by factors that aren't their actual behavior. This is not one of them.
Yeah, what I meant was, it is perhaps just notable that in all of the scrutiny and profiling of this person, there was not enough. It was not discovered that she's going on dates she's going on cruises with the guy she picked to be the prosecutor.
Yeah, but I completely
Maybe that's
accept
not
that.
discoverable, but I don't know.
I accept that, but for me, the problem is the much more serious problem. The red flag should have been that someone who had no experience in this matter was put in this position, and something that we haven't said
and then
before.
and then you might expect,
And then you ask why.
Right.
Then all of it
Right.
should. That's why I'm saying
And-
it's the red.
yeah.
It should have been the red
and
flag.
none of that came out. The mainstream media didn't do any. No media organization did any of that work. Odd. That's
Yeah,
all.
and to be clear, the whole point of a special prosecutor is to have someone with some independence from the rest of the prosecutor's office, so there's not a conflict of interest. So this is a significant problem. It is a significant problem, and hopefully, I think the silver lining on this for Democrats should be that you actually have an opportunity now to get someone in here who knows better what they're doing.
More Rising right after this.
On average, IT technicians spend 5 to 10 hours each week on manual mundane tasks like password resets and